cash or credit. If the banks create ample synthetic money, we are prosperous. If not, we starve. We are absolutely without a permanent money system. When one gets a complete grasp of the picture, the tragic absurdity of our hopeless position is almost incredible. But there it is. It is the most important subject intelligent persons can investigate and reflect upon. Or Graham Towers, governor of the Bank of Canada from 1935 to 1955, acknowledged, "Banks create money. This is what they are for. The manufacturing process to make money consists of making an entry in a book. That is all. Each and every time a bank makes a loan, new bank credit is created, brand new money." Robert B. Anderson, Secretary of the Treasury under Eisenhower, said in an interview reported in the August 31st, 1959 issue of U.S. News and World Report, "When a bank makes a loan, it simply adds to the borrower's deposit account in the bank by the amount of the loan. The money is not taken from anyone else's deposit. It was not previously paid into the bank by anyone. It is new money created by the bank for the use of the borrower." Michael Chossudovsky, professor of economics at the University of Ottawa, wrote during the Asian currency crisis of 1998, "Privately held money reserves in the hands of institutional speculators far exceed the limited capabilities of the world's central banks. The latter, acting individually or collectively, are no longer able to fight the tide of speculative activity. Monetary policy is in the hands of private creditors who have the ability to freeze state budgets, paralyze the payments process, thwart the regular disbursement of wages to millions of workers, as in the former Soviet Union, and precipitate the collapse of production and social programs." Today, Federal Reserve notes and U.S. dollar loans dominate the economy of the world. But this international currency is not money issued by the American people or their government. It is money created and lent by a private cartel of international bankers, and this cartel has the United States itself hopelessly entangled in a web of debt. By 2006, combined personal, corporate, and federal debt in the United States has reached a staggering $44 trillion, 4 times the collective national income, or $147,312 for every man, woman, and child in the country. The United States is legally bankrupt, defined in the dictionary as being unable to pay one's debt, being insolvent, or having liabilities in excess of a reasonable market value of assets held. By October 2006, the debt of the U.S. government had hit a breathtaking $8.5 trillion. Local, state, and national governments are all so heavily in debt that they have been forced to sell off public assets to satisfy creditors. Crowded schools, crowded roads, and cutbacks in public transportation are eroding the quality of American life. A 2005 report by the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the nation's infrastructure an overall grade of D, including its roads, bridges, drinking water systems, and other public works. "Americans are spending more time stuck in traffic and less time at home with their families," said the group's president. "We need to establish a comprehensive long-term infrastructure plan." We need to, but we can't, because government at every level is broke. If governments everywhere are in debt, who are they in debt to? The answer is that they are in debt to private banks. The cruel hoax is that governments are in debt for money created on a computer screen, money they could have created themselves. Money in the Land of Oz. The vast power acquired through this sleight of hand by a small clique of men pulling the strings of government behind the scenes evokes images from The Wizard of Oz, a classic American fairy tale that has become a rich source of imagery for financial commentators. In a 2002 article titled, "Who Controls the Federal Reserve System?" Victor Thorne wrote, "In essence, money has become nothing more than illusion, an electronic figure or mount on a computer screen. As time goes on, we have an increasing tendency towards being sucked into this Wizard of Oz vortex of unreality by magician priests that use the illusion of money as their control device." Christopher Mark wrote in a series called The Grand Deception, "Welcome to the world of the international banker, who, like the famous film The Wizard of Oz, stands behind the curtain of orchestrated national and international policymakers and so-called elected leaders. The late Murray Rothbard, an economist of the classical Austrian school, wrote, "Money and banking have been made to appear as mysterious and arcane processes that must be guided and operated by a technocratic elite. They are nothing of the sort. In money, even more than the rest of our affairs, we have been tricked by a malignant Wizard of Oz." James Galbraith wrote in the New American Prospect, "We are left with the thought that the Federal Reserve Board does not know what it is doing. This is the Wizard of Oz theory, in which we pull away the curtains only to find an old man with a wrinkled face playing with lights and loudspeakers." The analogies to the Wizard of Oz work for a reason. According to later commentators, the tale was actually written as a monetary allegory at a time when the money question was a key issue in American politics. In the 1890s, politicians were still hotly debating who should create the nation's money and what it should consist of. Should it be created by the government with full accountability to the people, or should it be created by private banks behind closed doors for the bank's own private ends? William Jennings Bryan, the populist candidate for president in 1896 and again in 1900, mounted the last serious challenge to the right of private bankers to create the national money supply. According to the commentators, Bryan was represented in Frank Baum's 1900 book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, by the Cowardly Lion. The lion finally proved he was the king of the beasts by decapitating a giant spider that was terrorizing everyone in the forest. The giant spider Bryan challenged at the turn of the 20th century was the Morgan-Rockefeller banking cartel, which was bent upon usurping the power to create the nation's money from the people and their representative government. Before World War I, two opposing systems of political economy competed for dominance in the United States. One operated out of Wall Street, the New York financial district that came to be the symbol of American finance. Its most important address was 23 Wall Street, known as the House of Morgan. J.P. Morgan was an agent of the powerful British banking interest. The Wizards of Wall Street and the old world bankers pulling their strings sought to establish a national currency that was based on the gold standard, one created privately by the financial elite who controlled the gold. The other system dated back to Benjamin Franklin and operated out of Philadelphia, the country's first capital, where the Constitutional Convention was held, and Franklin's Society for Political Inquiries planned the industrialization and public works that would free the new republic from economic slavery to England. The Philadelphia faction favored a bank on the model established in provincial Pennsylvania, where a state loan office issued and lent money, collected the interest, and returned it to the provincial government to be used in place of taxes. President Abraham Lincoln returned to the colonial system of government-issued money during the Civil War, but he was assassinated, and the bankers reclaimed control of the money machine. The silent coup of the Wall Street faction culminated with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, something they achieved by misleading Bryan and the other wary congressmen into thinking the Federal Reserve was actually federal. Today, the debate over who should create the national money supply is rarely heard, mainly because few people even realize it is an issue. Politicians and economists, along with everybody else, simply assume that money is created by the government, and that the inflation everybody complains about is caused by an out-of-control government running the dollar printing presses. The puppeteers working the money machine were more visible in the 1890s than they are today, largely because they had not yet succeeded in buying up the media and cornering public opinion. Economics is a dry and forbidding subject that has been made intentionally complex by banking interests intent on concealing what they are really doing. It is a subject that sorely needs lightening up with imagery, metaphors, characters, and a plot. So before we get into the ponderous details of the modern system of money based on debt, we'll take an excursion back to a simpler time when the money issues were more obvious and were still a burning topic of discussion. The plot line for The Wizard of Oz has been traced to the first ever march on Washington, led by an obscure Ohio businessman who sought to persuade Congress to return to Lincoln's system of government-issued money in 1894. Besides sparking a century of protest marchers and the country's most famous fairy tale, this little-known visionary and the band of unemployed men he led may actually have had the solution to the whole money problem then and now.